Hello friends, warm welcome in this video, that is female reproductive system. Friends, when a lady child attain age of 10 to 14 years, she become reproductively active. This functional state of reproductive system is characterized by onset of menstrual cycle, which is also called as menarche. During this period, various changes in the body characters of female are observed, which includes underarm hair, the development of pubic hair on the external genitalia, increase in breast size, broader pelvis, enlargement of hip size, and high pitch voice. The gamete ovum, or which is also called as egg, are produced by primary sex organ ovary in a female. Other organs than the ovary are called as secondary sex organs of the female. The female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries, a pair of oviducts or fallopian tube, uterus, vagina, external genitalia or vulva, a pair of vestibular gland or Bartholin's gland, and a pair of mammary gland. So now we will see each of these structure in detail. First, the ovary. It is the primary female sex organ which have main function in the production of egg or ovum and the female reproductive hormones. It is solid, oval or almond-shaped organ measuring 3 cm in length, 1.5 cm in breadth and 1 cm in thickness. It is located in the upper lateral part of the pelvis near the kidneys. Each ovary is held in position by ligaments by attaching it to the uterus and abdominal wall. The largest of these is a broad ligament formed by a fold of peritoneum. It holds the ovary, oviduct and the uterus to the dorsal body wall. The ovarian ligament attaches ovary to the uterus. The ovary produces 5 hormones, that is estrogen, progesterone, inhibin, activin and relaxin. Each ovary is a compact structure differentiated into a central part called as medulla and the outer part called as cortex. The cortex is covered externally by a layer of germinal epithelium. The stroma or loose connective tissue of the medulla has blood vessels, lymph vessels and nerve fibers. The outer cortex is more compact and granular. It shows large number of tiny masses called as ovarian follicles. These are collectively formed from the immature ova originating from cells of the dorsal endoderm of the yolk sac. The cells migrate to the gonadal ridge during embryonic development and divide mitotically. Now the cells are called as oogonia. As the oogonia continue to grow in size, they are surrounded by a layer of granulosa cells and form the rudiments of the ovarian follicles. The process of oogenesis starts much before the birth of the female baby, and by the end of the 12 weeks the ovary is fully formed. It has more than 2 million primordial follicles in it. The cells of the germinal epithelium give rise to a group of oogonia projecting into the cortex in the form of cords called egg tubes of a Pfeiffer or ovigerous tube. Each cord at its end has a round mass of oogonia cells called egg nest, from which the primordial ovarian follicles develop. Each primordial follicle has at its center a large primary oocyte which is diploid in nature and surrounded by a single layer of flat follicular cells. The primary oocyte starts with its meiotic division but gets arrested at meiosis first. Of the 2 million primordial follicles embedded in the fetal ovary, only about 1 million remain at the birth and only about 40,000 remain at the time of puberty. The large-scale destruction of the primordial follicles during the growth is called as atresia. The development of the primordial follicles into the mature or Graafian follicles restarts with the onset of puberty. During each menstrual cycle, only one of the primordial follicles starts growing to form a Graafian follicle. In each cycle, alternately one of the two ovaries produces the Graafian follicle. The different stages of development of oocytes can be seen here. The changes in the ovary are cyclic, occurring during each menstrual cycle, and it involves maturation of the primordial follicles into primary, secondary, and Graafian follicles. Each primary follicle has a multilayered cuboidal follicular cells, the stromases and theca over the follicle. It now changes into a secondary follicle. There is growth of the oocyte and the granulosa cells increase in number. They start producing the hormone estrogen. The secondary follicle grows into Graafian follicle by addition of more follicular cells. As this process of maturation of follicles takes place, they begin to move towards the surface of ovary. The Graafian follicle presses against the thin wall of the ovary, giving it a blistered appearance. The eggs are released from the Graafian follicle during the ovulation, and a remaining part of the follicle changes into a temporary endocrine gland called as corpus luteum. If the fertilization does not occur, the corpus luteum degenerates into a white scar called as corpus albicans. Graafian follicle is a mature ovarian follicle. An eccentric secondary oocyte is surrounded by non-cellular layer called as zona pellucida secreted by the vitelline membrane of the oocyte. The outermost protective and fibrous covering is called as theca externa. Inner to it is a cellular theca interna. It produces the hormone estrogen. Inner to the theca interna, the follicular cells form the membrana granulosa. From the membrana granulosa, the cells differentiate into discus proligerus and the corona radiata cells. Cumulus oophorus is the term used for the oocyte and surrounding granulosa cells. A fluid-filled cavity called antrum lies between the oocyte and the membrana granulosa. It is filled with a fluid called as liquor folliculi. The second structure is oviduct or fallopian tube, or which is also called as uterine tube. These are a pair of muscular ducts lying horizontally over the peritoneal cavity. The proximal part of the tube lies close to the ovary, and distally it opens into the uterus. Each tube is 10 to 12 cm in length. It is internally lined by ciliated epithelium. It can be divided into three regions, that is infundibulum, ampulla, and the isthmus. The infundibulum is the proximal funnel-like part with an opening called as ostium surrounded by many finger-like processes called fimbriae. Of this fimbriae, at least one is long and connected to the ovary. The cilia and the movement of fimbriae help in driving the ovulated egg to the ostium. Ampulla is the middle, long and straight part of the oviduct. Fertilization of the ovum takes place in this region of ampulla. The distal narrow part of the duct opening into the uterus is called as isthmus or cornua. The third structure is a uterus. It is commonly also called the womb. It is a hollow muscular pear-shaped organ located above and behind the urinary bladder. It is about 7.5 cm long, 5 cm broad and 2.5 cm in thickness. The uterus can be divided into three regions, that is fundus, body and cervix. The upper dome-shaped part of the uterus is referred as fundus. Normally, implantation of the embryo occurs in the fundus region. Body is the broad part of the uterus which gradually tapers downwards. The narrow neck of about 2.5 cm in length is a cervix. It extends into vagina. Its passage has two openings, an internal os towards the body and external os towards the vagina. Internally, the uterine wall can be distinguished into three layers: the outermost perimetrium, middle thick muscular myometrium made up of thick layer of smooth muscles. Vigorous contraction of these muscles cause labor during the parturition or childbirth. The innermost layer called endometrium or mucosal membrane is made up of stratified epithelium. The thickness of this layer regularly undergoes changes during the menstrual cycle. It is richly supplied with blood vessels and uterine glands. This provides nourishment to the developing fetus. The tubular female copulatory organ of about 7 to 9 cm in length is called as vagina. It lies between the cervix and the vestibule. The vaginal wall has an inner mucosal lining, the middle muscular layer, and an outer adventitia layer. The mucosal epithelium is stratified and non-keratinized and storage glycogen. There are no glands, but the cervical secretions of the mucus is received in the vagina. The opening of the vagina into the vestibule is called as vaginal orifice. This opening is covered partially by a fold of mucous membrane called as hymen. This hymen is often torn out during the first coitus activity or intercourse. However, it can also be broken by sudden fall or jolt, insertion of a vaginal tampon, active participation in some sports like horseback riding, cycling, etc. In some women, the hymen persists even after the coitus. In fact, the presence or absence of hymen is not a reliable indicator of virginity or sexual experience. The external genital organs of female include parts external to the vagina and are collectively called as vulva, means covering or wrapping, or pudendum. They include vestibule, labia minora, clitoris, labia majora, and mons pubis. Vestibule is a median vertical depression of a vulva enclosing the urethral and vaginal opening. Labia minora are another pair of thin folds inner to the labia majora with which they merge posteriorly to form the fourchette, while towards the anterior end they converge into a hood-like covering around the clitoris. Clitoris is a small, conical and sensitive projection lying at the anterior end of the labia minora. It has a pair of erectile tissue, the corpora cavernosa, and is homologous to the penis. Labia majora are a pair of fleshy folds of skin forming the boundary of vulva. They are homologous to the scrotum. They surround and protect the other parts of the external genitalia and include the urethral and vaginal openings in the vestibule. Mons pubis is a fleshy elevation above the labia majora. The mons pubis and other parts of the labia majora shows pubic hair. The next part of the female reproductive system is accessory glands or vestibular glands, or which is also called as Bartholin's glands. A pair of gland homologous to the bulbourethral or Cowper's glands of the male is also present in female. They open into the vestibule and release a lubricating fluid. The accessory organ of female reproductive system for production and release of milk after parturition is the mammary gland. Development of the mammary gland occurs at puberty under the influence of estrogen and progesterone. Lactotropic hormone, that is LTH or prolactin, help in development of a lactiferous tubus during the pregnancy. The mammary glands are a pair of rounded structures present in the subcutaneous tissue of the anterior thorax in the pectoral region from second to sixth rib. These are modified sweat glands. Each mammary gland contains fatty connective tissue and numerous lactiferous ducts. The glandular tissue of each breast is divided into 15 to 20 irregularly shaped mammary lobes, each with alveolar glands and lactiferous duct. Alveolar glands secretes milk which is stored in the lumen of alveoli. The alveoli opens into mammary tubes. The tubes of each lobe join to form a mammary duct. Many mammary ducts join to form a wider mammary ampulla which is connected to lactiferous duct. These converge towards the nipple located near the tip of the breast. It is surrounded by a dark brown colored and circular area of the skin called as areola. So this is all about the female reproductive system. If you like this video, then subscribe to our channel, share this video to needy ones and press the bell icons to receive notifications. Thank you.